Well, hello there, my studio teacher friends. Today is an exciting day around here at Beyond Measure as I am officially off of my summer hiatus and back in your ears with new content. It is so important to take breaks, my friends. If you are in the throes of revising your studio calendars for the upcoming year, I can offer you no better advice than to plan for more time off. Even if you don't feel like you need to take it, you will come back refreshed and at the top of your teaching game. I promise. There's a whole episode about that. I will link it in today's show notes. But for now, let's get on with a brand new show. My name is Christina Whitlock, and you are listening to episode 268 of the Beyond Measure podcast. All right, friends, what a pleasure to be back with you in real time. I feel exactly the same way about this podcast as I do about teaching. I never feel like I need to take a break. I feel like I can just keep pushing through and working. It's fine. Everything's fine, right? But when I actually give myself a little bit of breathing room, it's always refreshing to feel excited about this work again. There is something to be said for giving your creative energy a chance to build up a little bit so that it's just ready to explode in a really good way, of course. I am pumped for all kinds of things coming up, including the second session of my intermediate piano teaching cohort that I get to co-lead with the fabulous Jana Williamson. Last year's cohort was a fulfilling experience on every level, and this year's cohort is shaping up to be another incredible ride. We're not newbies at this anymore, so we've changed some things that we think are going to make it even better. And the teachers on this roster that we're going to get to learn alongside, you're all just so great. We start on September 4th, and then we meet weekly for 12 weeks. I just wanted to let you know that we have quite literally a couple of spots left as of this recording. So if you had any interest in joining us for this 12-week study of all things intermediate piano teaching, we're talking literature and technique and learning styles and transfer students and teaching intermediate rhythm and reading and historical performance practices and all the things, you better head on over to christinawhitlock.com/cohort before this group gets completely sold out. Okay, enough of that. Let's get on with today's episode. This is something that I've been kicking around inside my mind for a while. The more I work with other teachers, the more fascinated I become with naming the skills that our method books are not teaching. I don't say this as an indictment on method books. I'm not saying that they're missing things that they should be including. I just want to highlight the fact that no method series on planet Earth could specifically outline everything your students need to know. It would be a mess. It's not your method book's job to do the teaching for you. Method books are collections of graded repertoire, and they work for us, not the other way around, right? Now, there's this specific exercise that I like to give my pedagogy students. It's actually available for purchase as well if you're really curious. But that exercise involves looking through a method book and making a list of every concept a student will learn in that book. Now, there's more to this exercise for the record, but that's how it starts, by listing every concept a student is going to learn while working through that book. Most method series will begin with some kind of concept map. Maybe it's just the table of contents that uses subheadings for each unit. But regardless, there tends to be some kind of breakdown at the beginning of the book about what students are going to learn on which pages. Most of my pedagogy students and other teachers that I've walked through this exercise, most of them will use that breakdown at the start of the book and call it done. For instance, Unit 1 teaches quarter, half, and whole notes, finger numbers, and groups of 2 and 3 black keys. Case closed. Done. Now, obviously, those are important concepts to note. The book is going to teach those concepts. However, I contend that there are many things about learning our instrument that go beyond those headings. It's more than rhythmic values and dynamic signs and things that can neatly be categorized in subheadings. And I'm kind of obsessed with figuring out all of those things. Today, I'm sharing a few of them with you in hopes that my obsession will be a little contagious. I am really curious about what skills and concepts you have noticed that are never expressly taught in your method books. So again, I'm going to share a few things that I've noticed with you. Are you ready? Oh, this is going to be fun. First up today, let's talk about measure numbers. A lot of us made a shocking discovery when we pivoted to teaching exclusively online during the pandemic lockdowns. I read many posts online where teachers were commiserating that our students didn't know how to find measure 7. It was one of the many things that we all realized we'd been taking for granted. Sure, we had always asked students to start in measure 7, but we also always pointed to it when we asked. So, I know a lot of teachers who had to take time out of those online lessons to teach students how to count and number measures. So, let me say it here. If we are not intentional about explaining how measure numbers work, some students will never realize that square at the top of the second line with a 9 in it means that is measure number 9. And even if they do, a surprising number of students think that only the measures with the little numbered boxes are counted. As in, if measure 9 is numbered in the book and you ask your student to start at measure 10, sometimes they will say, "Oh, I only see measure 9. That is a learning opportunity, my friend. So, sure, all of our method series talk about measures and what those bar lines are telling you. But actively counting and numbering those measures is a whole other story. This is a skill we take for granted, and a lot of students will figure it out intuitively over time, but others, they will not know the difference between the second measure and the second system or the second line until we spell it out clearly for them, right? Do you have students who confuse the second measure with the second line? You're not alone, friend. And I just have to say, because telling is not teaching, we can't just say the words and expect them to stick every time. For the first few weeks, your students are introduced to measures and occasionally throughout their study. It's great to take a moment or two and ask your student questions like, hey, which hand is playing in measure 4? Or can you point to measure 3 for me? And how many measures are in this piece altogether? Can you count them all? These things are important. And it's also important to pull out music from other publishers, like music that uses a different spacing on the page or a different typesetting. Ask students to find measure 9 in that piece. You could even pull out a big old Prokofiev sonata and ask them to find measure 12. I mean, that's really fun, actually. Watching your students have this initial shock when they see such a gigantic score, but then seeing relief come over their faces when they discover that they can, in fact, figure out where measure 12 is, even in such a gigantic, scary looking piece. So, when I talk about things that method books don't expressly teach, this is a good example, right? Students learn about measures, but introducing them to the idea of numbering measures and counting their measures is up to us. Here's something else that method books don't expressly teach: the real, actual functions of tonic and dominant. Now, sure, most methods teach that first scale degree is called tonic and the fifth scale degree is called dominant. And there may be some explorations about when to use tonic and when to use dominant in some of the companion theory books. But these two terms are largely regarded as words to know in case you're ever taking a theory test and have to name them, right? When I was a new baby piano teacher at the ripe old age of 14, that's how I regarded them as well. Because everything I knew about piano teaching was coming from the method books that were carried by the music store I was teaching at. But here's the thing: tonic and dominant relationships are the foundation of everything we listen to here in Western civilization. Students cannot fully understand the music they are playing until they have some working knowledge of tonic and dominant relationships. This impacts everything from sight reading to improvisation to pattern recognition and memorization. Students need to be singing these harmonies and learning to listen for how they change throughout their pieces. Aside from Marilyn Lowe's Music Moves for Piano series, I think it's fair to say that most of our materials are lacking in attention to this concept. Now, obviously, this can get really deep, but I have a very simple application for you today. Are you ready? Most of us have a student or two who love adding their own endings to pieces, right? Do you have that one student who always needs to add one more note to the end of their piece when they're finished? And sometimes it takes them a minute to get to the correct note. So, like, they're playing a piece in the key of G major, and then they try to end on a C, and then they realize that doesn't sound right. So they play a D, and then that doesn't sound right. And eventually they land on G and breathe a big sigh of relief, right? Yes, these experiences are universal to all of us. When you introduce students to the term tonic, I think it's important to point out that tonic sounds like home. Music learning theory teachers will call tonic the resting tone because that's where music feels settled. So I always make it a point to tell my students, if you want to add an ending to your piece, you just have to make sure the ending is on tonic. Unless, of course, you're trying to mess with your audience and you want to leave them hanging on a musical question mark, in which case you end on anything besides tonic. But seriously, do your students realize their pieces usually end on the tonic? If they want to add a single note in the upper or lower register as a final ta-da at the end of their piece, do they know that it's not a random guessing game which note to choose? That as long as they know the key that they're in, they just have to choose that note? I don't think a lot of students know that until we make it a point to tell them. And I don't believe most method books are going to make that point. So again, that one's up to us. Let me give you another one today. Your method book is not going to tell students where their eyes should be when they play. Sure, maybe there's one suggestion here and there, but learning to train the eyeballs is a serious part of our job, and a lot of us overlook it. Ha, overlook. Get it? I'm so funny. But let's be clear. This topic is not without controversy. There are a lot of opinions about what is good and what is bad when it comes to training our line of sight. Personally, I do believe students from early piano study and forward need to learn how it feels to use different fingers without looking at them. This builds physical security that is tough to find if students are always using their eyesight as a crutch. It also makes sight reading challenging if eyes are darting up and down between the score and the piano keys. These things, in my mind, are all true, and that's why I'm mentioning this topic today. I do think we need to pay attention to where our students' eyes are when they play, and I think we need to look for moments when their line of sight is limiting what they are able to accomplish at the piano. There are emerging thoughts that we shouldn't go to extreme lengths to limit our students' visual experience. So many of us have done that trick where we hold a book over our students' hands so they cannot see what they're doing. Or maybe you've even seen teachers use specialized dribbling goggles that basketball players use to block their line of sight to the keyboard. Now, I think these are fine when used as kind of a novelty to make a point, but I also understand the complexities of visual processing, and there is legitimate evidence to say that it's not as simple as putting literal blinders on our students. So, as with most things, extremes can be a little controversial in our work. Regardless, I will say this, your method books do not teach you where your students' eyes should be while they're playing. So that one's on us. Oh my goodness, time is running out on us. So let me give you one more thing that your method books probably are not teaching. How about looking for patterns? Music study is all about pattern recognition, right? Comparing same versus different, looking for repeated ideas and taking note of any changes along the way, listening for those similarities and differences. This is one of those things that we take for granted as seasoned musicians. When your student is playing a 12-measure piece in ABA form, you probably think it's obvious that measures 1 through 4 are the same as measures 9 through 12. It's second nature for you to notice those things. But it is not second nature for our students, is it? Furthermore, it's more challenging for our students to recognize those patterns than we realize. What might seem obvious to you is likely not so obvious to them. Here's what we don't want to do. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I find myself doing this more than I would like to admit. But we don't want to say, "Hey, Johnny, you just played measures 1 through 4 so well. Now tell me, what do you notice about 9 through 12? Do you see they're exactly the same?" Now, that comment might seem harmless, and it is, but I just gave away the discovery that I wanted Johnny to make. I should have stopped when I said, "What do you notice about measures 9 through 12? Even if it takes Johnny some time, and it probably will, I should avoid rushing to the conclusion that I want him to draw. My telling him the answer is infinitely less effective than letting him come to the answer himself. That's probably a whole episode unto itself, right? Letting your students work for answers instead of giving them everything yourself. Well, maybe we'll talk about that later this year. Can I just say, it is so nice to be back with you today. My summer hiatus was 1,000,000% necessary, but I did miss you. So if you're curious about how I spent my summer, I will be sending out some reflections on the past few weeks in this week's Piano Teacher Confessions email. If you're not on the Piano Teacher Confessions email list, you should get on it. Links, as always, are in today's show notes. I hope today's episode got the ball rolling on some new thoughts for you. As I said earlier, I would love to know what concepts you've noticed are not covered in your method books. I have lots of thoughts. I'll probably do a part 2 on this topic later this year, but I want you to be on the lookout for things that you teach without being prompted by your method book. We all have our things, right? And then I want you to tell me about them. You can find me on social media at Beyond Measure Podcast, or you can email me through the link in the show notes for today. Now, please note, in today's episode, I did not even touch my obsession with teaching students how to read the staff. There are many, many things about teaching the staff that our method books don't expressly cover. If you've enjoyed the thoughts in today's episode and you would like to know more about how I dissect the staff in a way that takes away the intimidation that a lot of our students feel in that transition, I would encourage you to check out my Building Better Music Readers course. Building Better Music Readers is a 12-week breakdown of the micro steps it takes to read on the staff. We talk about alphabet fluency, finger number drills, seeing notes as groups instead of individual pitches. The list goes on and on. I receive compliments on that material all the time, and I would love to help you transform the way that you teach students to read on the staff. That link, along with everything else I've mentioned today, is in the show notes for today's episode. So you can find those show notes right in your podcast player, or just head to christinawhitlock.com/episode 268. So I guess you can spend 12 weeks with me in your inbox with Building Better Music Readers, Or you can spend 12 weeks with me live on Zoom this fall in the intermediate piano teaching cohort. I don't know. There are so many fun learning opportunities at hand, my friends. Don't we work in a great profession? Okay, let's grab a glass and toast ourselves out of here, shall we? Studio music teacher friends from all around the world. Today we are celebrating being part of a worldwide network of teachers. Let's be honest, no one fully understands the intricacies of our job unless they do our job. So I just want to take a moment and appreciate all the ears that are listening to this show today. We truly are in great company here. And also, let's give thanks for our method books. They may not give us everything we need to teach, but they certainly give us helpful material to support our own instruction, and I'm so glad for them. I hope you'll take advantage of the many method series out there. I think they each have something they can teach us. And as you mull all of that over, just know that my glass is raised to you, my very beloved teacher friends. Hear, hear. That's a wrap on episode 268 of Beyond Measure. Make sure you check out today's show notes for a plethora of goodies. That's christinawhitlock.com/episode 268. I will see you in your inboxes on Thursday for another installment of Piano Teacher Confessions. And of course, I'll be back on Monday with another new episode. Onward and upward, my friends. Go take great care of yourselves this week.